Welcome to Athletes and Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct, where we've created a platform for athletes and other alumni to network and connect in centralized locations in various community centers. And we do this show we interview former collegiate professional athletes and talk about their journey, transition out of sports, and ultimately what they're doing today. It's all about teaching, inspiring athletes that there is life after sports. It's such an issue today between mental health and financial literacy. Very excited today to have Brett Hundley on with us. How you doing, Brett?
Man, doing great. Thank you for having me, man. I'm excited too.
I love the energy. Brett was telling me the stuff he's doing all over the place. We'll talk about a lot of that stuff later. And I was joking around with him, but it's true. My head's spinning. There's a lot to talk about, but we'll do the condensed version today.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Oh, good deal. So Brett played quarterback at UCLA, and then ultimately went into the NFL. Started out at Green Bay, played Seattle, Arizona, Indianapolis, and I guess kind of the life of a quarterback in the NFL takes you to some different stops there, right?
Yeah, it sure does, man. But it was a fun journey, and I'm in the heart of it. So all these questions are going to be things that I'm doing like today. So I'm in my transition out, and I think it's an awesome opportunity to talk about it.
Yeah, that's great. And his big thing now today is real estate and development, property management, do a lot of things. And then also the big thing I talk about, I have another podcast too called NIL for You, where we talk about giving back, and Brett's all about that. He has the Hundley Foundation as well. So we'll talk about all that. But Brett, I always like to ask people, how did sports shape you growing up, leading up into college?
Man, sports shaped me. Sports had such a big impact on my life, just because that was, in a sense, like a lot of us, sort of like my only way out. And for me, I don't put everything I had into it. So it sure had a major impact. And, I'm glad it's went to where it's at now. And I've got to the place I've been to, but football specifically, and not only football. I mean, even all the other sports I played throughout high school and stuff, but they all had a major, major, major impact in who I am today and sort of how I operate.
Now, so did you dream about being a professional athlete? Was it football, or was it maybe one of the other sports?
No, yeah, I thought I was going to be LeBron James for a second. That didn't work. But no, I really always wanted to play football. My dad played football at U of A. Uncle played football at Wichita State, which is no longer have a football team. But so I came from a football background, and yeah, I always knew that I wanted to make it to the NFL.
That's great. And I joke around. I always say I want to be a professional baseball player, which I did, Major League Baseball player, but the talent wasn't there, so I'm doing podcasts. So,
I gotta love it.
Yeah. So let's talk about the big thing we talk about is just transitioning out of sports, and such a major issue. So when you were in college, because you're a little more current to when I went to school, were there efforts, and I don't mean just like the 1-day workshop, but to work with the athletes, and not just football, but across all sports, and kind of teaching about life after sports?
When I was in college, like I don't know. I would say there was, but there probably wasn't, and I'm sure that UCLA, they do a great job with all this stuff, but sometimes it's hard because it's like there was, but like your mindset isn't on like what's life after football at that point. Your mindset is like,
Right.
What do I got to do to make it? Like, I don't really care.
Yeah.
I ain't got no plan B right now. So I think for myself, there was a lot of opportunities, but I was so focused on like, how do I make it before even thinking of like, hey, like there's life after this.
Yeah, and I think that's the case a lot. And it's interesting when when I talk about just different athletes, different sports. I mean, somewhere it's not as prevalent of potentially being a professional athlete. I think they're more grounded to like, okay, I want to look at the plan B, plan C, like when they're in school. Whereas I definitely understand, being someone like in your case where you're Division I football, and you're kind of zoned in on like that goal of being professional.
Yeah, I would say for me, it didn't hit until the NFL was ending. Then I was like, oh crap. I don't know if I can cuss on here, but oh shit, like then
Okay.
I had to get real. Yeah. Then I had to get real. So for me, it really hit more towards now.
Right. And I think one of the things we're trying to do, and we've talked about, somebody talked about offline, but trying to put together a team of resource partners, mental health, financial literacy, sales, could be branding, could be NIL as well now with all that. But, putting this team together and becoming an extension of that athletic department, or potentially even, we've talked to players like yourself that have played in the NFL that see maybe some value that other things that maybe the NFL could be doing too to help the alumni out, because that's where I think is a key area. I mean, you've got your current athletes, but then it just seems like a lot of the alumni athletes get forgotten unless they were star players.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a very, very true point. I mean, and statistically, I mean, most of us don't make it to the league, so that program is huge for a lot of us athletes.
Yeah, that's so, and something we definitely want to concentrate more on as well. So let's talk about networking, connecting, and just especially talk about the importance of doing it while you're still playing.
Yeah, this one is such a massive piece that I didn't even like for myself. I didn't even necessarily understand the magnitude of how networking can really set you up for success outside of things. And again, I didn't necessarily learn it. And honestly, I give a lot of credit to the foundation because I learned a lot of my networking through the foundation. And so, like I said, what I gave, I received 100 times back. And oh yeah, there we go. For me, I think if athletes can understand the power of networking a little bit sooner, they can really utilize it a lot better. And like I said, I got lucky. Foundation really helped me. But small things, especially like for example, and this is networking without even knowing it. When I got tied into the Epilepsy Foundation back in LA, the lady who we met, who was running the Los Angeles chapter, she is now the CEO of my foundation. And stuff like that back in college, where I'm not thinking this is networking or this where this relationship's going to going. I'm just giving back, doing what I can. But lo and behold, that relationship turns out to be a massive relationship in my life right now.
Yeah, and I think that's you brought up a good point just about maybe not looking for it when you're younger. I mean, I think about even back when you were playing high school, or even younger than that, just the people that are surrounding, whether it be the coaches, it could be parents or friends or businesses. Just that I think it's important to tap into that. I was talking to an agent, and he just said one of the biggest, best time to network and connect when you're still playing because you're still relevant.
Yep. Yeah, that's a big piece too. That being like once you're out, it's so much harder to get into them doors. But when you're in it, like getting into doors, getting access to places, events, stuff like that, people, you can reach out and be like, "Hey, I'm the quarterback for so and so, and would love to just sit down." And I mean, I was surprised how many people would take that call and answer it. But when you're out and you're saying, "Hey, I'm a retired NFL guy, 5 years out," doesn't hit different. So taking
Right.
advantage of the opportunity in the opportunity.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. And then let's switch gears a little bit. So let's talk about NIL, name, image, likeness. And I always like to talk about this, both the positives and the negatives. And you're a little bit closer to it than some of the other athletes, but still it was before your time. So give me your thoughts, both again positive and negative.
Yeah, I think if it's utilized correctly, it's a great thing. I was, I mean, the National College Players Association started at UCLA. So I was, even when I was going through it, I was a part of it. And to see the change of like when I was there, they're these schools are making massive amounts of money, but we couldn't, make any money on our likeness to now seeing what these cats are getting paid. There was a funny story that just came out. The running back for the Rams, he was at Ohio State. He was making more at Ohio State than his first year in the league, just
Wow.
from NIL. So I'm a fan of it. Like, obviously these schools give us a degree and a scholarship, but I'm a big fan of knowing that, like, hey, if I have these kids should be getting paid for now, because again, most of them won't even make it to the NFL. So I'm a huge advocate of it. I am also a big fan of. I wish there was more structure when NIL got announced. They sort of just said, "Go ahead and let the floodgates open," and it was a wild wild west. And I wish there was a little bit more structure because you got to think everybody's so scared of giving rookies in the NFL all this money. Well, now you're giving it to kids who are just getting out of high school. And a lot of us too might not have the understanding of how to manage our money or use our money or come from places that, so I just wish there was a little bit better ways of structuring how to access the money and how it's going to be handled. But that creates a whole nother dilemma as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. Most of the time when we talk about, I guess the downside is probably the lack of education because you just
Yeah.
hear the stories and this is what I've said on a couple different podcasts, but I heard a story about this kid, had got like some kind of like a $40,000 NIL deal, and basically spent all the money with his friends, which I
Yep.
understand younger and all that. But what happened was it brought his family income threshold above to where he
Above.
lost his scholarship as well. So I mean,
Yep.
and that should never happen. I mean, it's just there's definitely a need for people to teach and help these young athletes, through this whole process.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge thing. Like, and again, it creates spaces where players, one, they don't might not necessarily know how to manage their own money, like spending on stupid stuff. But two, some of these players can get taken. Well, a lot of them can get taken advantage of because there was a player who just signed. I mean, he signed a deal, whatever it's worth, but he gave away like 25% of his career earnings going forward when he goes to the league,
Wow.
and it's like stuff like that. I'm like, that whoever was around him he should have never signed that.
Yeah, no, that's wrong. It's wrong to take advantage of it. So, well, hopefully, some again, one of the other things we always talk about, and I talk about my other podcast, NIL podcast, is that giving back, like NIL for good, which I think is pretty cool. And
Yes.
you see some
Yeah.
of these athletes are giving back, which is great.
Yeah, I'd love to see stuff like that, and it really does show a lot with how they're raised and stuff, and so it's awesome to see that these kids, even in the amount of money they're getting, still taking a piece of it and doing some good by it.
Yeah, no, for sure. So let's talk about alumni engagement. Obviously, Alumni Direct is big for us, but talk about maybe twofold. Like one, when you were there, was UCLA encouraging alumni athletes to come back? I guess again across all sports. I mean, I think obviously football would be more prominent, but to come back and not just for the golf tournament and all that, but like to maybe mentor some of these current athletes or maybe even some of the alumni athletes.
It wasn't the biggest thing when I got out for us athletes, especially football, to come back and to help. Now, I do believe in it, and I'm a fan of it, but it wasn't a big program at all that UCLA offered. And I think now it's for sure a lot bigger. So there's a lot more guys who are going back. When Chip got in there, there was some changes and stuff like that, which I think helped with some of these guys, not even UCLA guys, but even other guys who go and train at UCLA, and now the facilities are open to them training. So it's created that opportunity, but it wasn't a huge thing when I left.
Okay, yeah, and I think you hit on a key point there. It seems like a lot of it might be with the culture of the
Yeah,
athletic department. It could be like if there's a change in the athletic director, change in the coaching staff. Sometimes these guys, the previous coaches or the new coaches, they don't really remember their alumni because they weren't part of their coaching.
yeah.
Is that? Do you see that factor in as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It all always top down. So if the head coach is big on it, it'd be a big thing. And now, like I said, Chip has done a great job with that. There's a lot of guys I see going back, and I think that, and even I've been back to 2 games now, and this was the first year. I mean, I've been playing this whole time, so I haven't been able to, anyways. But this is the first time I've been back, and it's been very welcoming going back and seeing that type of atmosphere and experience, because I had forgot what it was like playing at UCLA, and now going back I'm like, damn, it's crazy, man. But it goes fast because it's also awesome too, because even when I was able to go back for the first time, to know that people still know who you are and they're rooting for you and have been watching you this long, there's a lot of opportunity, and especially networking, people to meet, and people who are willing to help you, especially where you played college at.
Yeah, and I think just athletes taking that advice that Brett just mentioned, just tap into that alumni. I mean, I think just going back, not only having that pay it forward mentality, helping the current or even alumni athletes, but getting that help, as an alumni, just connecting with that group. So I always this is a new one on my most recent podcast I started doing. I kind of like it. So I got two questions for you. So the
Yes, sir.
first one is give advice to freshman Brett. What
Man.
advice would you give?
Oh man, I wish I could tell myself something back in the freshman days. But if I could tell myself what to do, or maybe what to be aware of in college, was one, just to even though I was told this, I guess it didn't register with me to enjoy it because it goes fast, and everybody told me that. But when you're young, you're like, all right, I got 4 or 5 years here. Like it goes fast. So enjoy it. But two, really understand that this opportunity, regardless if you go to the league or not, can really help your life going forward. So make the most of it. And I think I made the most of my time there, but I think just being aware of that, and even the people you meet, like one of the things I wish I would have done more, I didn't know networking. I would just meet people, am who I am. And it was nice to meet all these people, but the understanding of like what networking can do, I really feel like I could have used it a lot more. But I think being aware of that is understanding how to network, how to keep up with people, stuff like that. But you're in college, you got a million things going on. But I think just those two pieces of advice is really, really understanding the opportunity. If you don't want to play football, you can, and if you want to, go to tech or whatever, really start utilizing the college's networking while you're playing, because that is a huge opportunity to say. And I got experience to internship with a guy. His name is Eric Flamholtz throughout my UCLA career, and it was the greatest experience of my life. And we're still good friends to this day. And he's actually on our professional advisory board for the foundation.
That's great. And
Yeah.
So now we'll bring it up a notch. So now, what advice do you give to the senior Brett?
Oh man, senior Brett. Again, enjoy the year because it's going to go fast. But just to really, really understand that now, especially in the realm of things that I was in, I wish I would have been a little bit more aware, just to make sure I really hey, I'm gonna reach out to everybody I can before I leave UCLA to really try to get as much as I can from this college. And I think that would have been the biggest thing. And I did a good job at it, but I think I could have still did a little bit more better.
Yeah, I think we always look back like, I could have done something extra.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go now. In the big, like I said, with the show, we talk about athletes transition out of sports. So you had two. So we're going to talk about your transition from UCLA to the NFL, and then we'll talk about after you're done with the NFL.
Okay. Yeah. UCLA to the NFL was that transition's a little bit. It's for sure a different transition, absolutely in every way, but it's a little bit easier just because it's football to football. And so my life was heavily predicated, primarily everything I did was football. So to go from that to the NFL and now to be getting paid, I was happy. You couldn't tell me, at that point I was like, all right, I'm finally getting some money. I'm not broke. I can travel a little bit. I can have fun. And so that it was a fun opportunity and a fun transition for me. But as well as now it's like you made it and you're at the highest point, but now you realize there's not another point. After you're done in this league, it's over. I think understanding that realization for me is when things sort of kicked in, but that transition wasn't the hardest. That one was just more of a fun, I finally made it. And now, seeing how the NFL operates, being able to understand the playbooks differently, how things operate, learning, when I went to Green Bay from Aaron Rodgers. So it was really, really cool. It was almost like me growing up, I think, in the first couple of years in the league.
Okay. And then what about now? You've played football your whole life and now you're transitioning, more recently now, you're leaving the NFL. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so this transition completely night and day different, night and day different, and the reason I say that, even for myself, I had never really enjoyed weekends. I was always on I'm up at 6 a.m. and I'm out the door working out, doing this stuff. I'm not lying. I had no idea. When I was done and I got sort of released by Baltimore, I had 3 months or 4 months of just trying to figure out, stay in shape and stuff. And that was the first time in my life during football season that I had not been somewhere doing something. And I had to really sort of try to cope with what that is. How am I feeling? Cause I feel like once you're leaving, the biggest reason I say that transition is always the hardest is because your identity, it's a loss of identity. And so mentally it's a lot more straining because that football to football transition, college to NFL, the identity's still there. When you go from the NFL and you're out, you don't have that no more. That identity piece is really a detachment. And, hopefully all these, players now are, being helped in the mental aspect of like understanding like who they are is not who they are in football. But that is such a hard piece for most players. And it was for myself. I remember times at night where I'd be sitting there like, man, like this feels weird. I've never had this, And I thought it was weird being able to go to dinner at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock and walk around the streets, And I'm like, all right, I've never experienced this during this time of the year, and so for me, it was a major, major difference. And thankfully, back in when I was playing with Arizona, I had started some things. I think that transition gets a lot harder if you don't necessarily know what you're going to go to, and that's where a lot of players also get in trouble is idle time and free time in the transition, where you're sort of just figuring out what to do. And if you do it right, you can make the most of it. But that free time we're so structured to know that when we wake up, we're supposed to be here, we're supposed to do that when there's nothing, you don't like, nobody's telling you what to do, and it's the first time for your life and you don't necessarily know what you want to do next, that gets dangerous for a lot of players. And for myself, thankfully, I had started sort of building about 2 years out when I was at Arizona. I sort of got on the fence with things, and I was like, this is looking a little weird here. And I'd started getting into what I was going into next. And so thankfully after that, was at Arizona. And then I got 3 more years after Arizona. And in that time of, those amount of years, I was able to use everything I was doing those 3 years and like put them into my companies, build companies, foundations. And so when I was out now, currently speaking, I joke with everybody now, but like I feel like I'm more busy without football than I was with football now. so it's a funny dynamic for me, but it's not the same for all players.
No, definitely not. So give like maybe just a couple, key words of advice to athletes, whether it's from college or professional, transitioning out.
Yeah, I would say is one of the biggest things I always ask myself, and I ask other players who are in the same position as me or about to, is figuring out like what are your passions? What do you love to do outside of football? Like who are you outside of football? Yeah, I mean, remove the title, all that away. Like who really are you? I think first off is starting there and figuring out like who you are outside of football, because in that loss of identity, there's a death, if you call it, and you have to find something that you've never necessarily spent a lot of time with because football has been such a main part. So really figuring out and taking the time and giving yourself space to find out who you are. And then and figuring that out will also tell you like what you love to do, like what are your passions. And, I knew for myself, and actually for myself, I've realized in those times that it's not like I didn't love football, but I love competing. So when I'm not playing in football, I'm still in it, but like I love the fact of competing. So like that's what I truly love. So I realized like my passions were competing, traveling, which is a big one, giving back, the foundation, and then cooking. So that's another big one, and a couple other things. I fell in love with real estate and businesses and stuff like that. So I found something that I wanted to do outside of football, and in that time of me trying to figure it out, I was able to sort of capitalize on those. But I would say is those two biggest things: find out who you are, and for sure that's the biggest one, and then it'll sort of direct you on what you want to do and what your passions are.
Yeah, no, that's great, and because it's just so many issues. It's and I think you said it earlier too. I think a lot of times the athlete just identifies themselves as the sport or the athlete,
Yeah.
and not the person. Now, like Brett mentioned, he's doing a ton of different things. So he got into once he's out, he got into real estate, property management. So talk a little bit about some of the things that you're doing today, including your foundation.
Yeah. So, like I said, man, I'm telling you, I laugh all the time because I feel like I'm more busy now than I was with football. But I got into property management. So when I was back playing in Arizona, my lockers, and this is sort of like a networking. And again, it wasn't like I was trying to, but it is. My locker mates was Prince Mukamara, who grew up out here in Arizona. He was into real estate at the time, still is. Devin Kennard, who's a big real estate guy. He was actually born and raised out here together. and even Larry Fitzgerald, and just talking to all these guys, figuring out like what to do with my money. And they had all talking about real estate. And then I was like, great. So me and Prince spent every single day. He sat down with me after practice. We went through numbers, sort of his real estate stuff, portfolio, and I just learned. And then I bought my first property right around the corner from him, and then put it on Airbnb and as a short-term rental, and it did well. And then slowly but surely, I kept buying more, bought another, and then I started developing as well. And then, one of the big things that was a common issue was, the management of these properties, and more specifically for athletes in the area. So for me, Prince, Devin, all these guys, we're trying to find somebody we trust really to manage our properties. And so I was like, screw it, I'll do it. So I created a company and got some good people I really trust to do things with. And then, I started managing properties for athletes. And then, we grew to start managing the public outside of that. And that company is called Streams Management. But then on the side of that, I also started developing. So started building, bought a house, tore it down, built a brand new house up in Arcadia out here in Arizona. And just sold that actually in June, and then started another project in September. And that one is going live January 1. So, and that one's still under the same umbrella called Streams Developments. But, that's been an awesome opportunity for me. And I found that I loved real estate, doing all this stuff. I love building. I love, going back to school for it to learn really the ins and outs of everything, even the management side of things. And then the foundation. The foundation really was something that completely grew on its own, but and it's really a testament to the network. Random enough, the guy who became my co-chair in my foundation, Sam Estes, like a bigger brother to me, but we weren't even going to meet. We technically weren't even supposed to meet. Some reason my marketing team, one person had been like trying to negotiate price and stuff like that when it comes to the Epilepsy Foundation. And they were asking like, hey, $10,000 for me to come speak. I had gotten word of it. And I was like, absolutely not. Like, I'll go for free. This is something I really love doing. And so I went, and at the event was Sam Estes, and random enough, we got locked in a basement of Shoppers Supply because a tornado came through. So we were stuck there for like 3 hours. And we just kicked it off, became a best friend of mine, and asked him to be the co-chair of my foundation. And then while I was playing, him and Nether, who was our former CEO, Danielle Morano, who again was the Vegas director of the Epilepsy Foundation, came over to the foundation, became our CEO. And then they really, really made it special. And then now that I'm out of football, I'm able to give a lot of my time to that. And now we have directors in Arizona. We have one in Vegas. We have one in California. We have our CEO. So our staff has grown a lot, and we're pretty big in the things we're doing. But it's been a fun process, man, just giving back and doing, and that's really where my passion is. I love doing that stuff. So it's been a fun ride, man.
How's it? So what does the foundation focus on?
So our primary focus is to helping children and families in needs. So we got started with the emphasis in epilepsy, and our base is epilepsy. Okay. But we're general enough with our mission statement being just to help children and families in needs that we do programs for first-time fathers with Eisner Health back in California. It's completely free to them. It's a 12-week course for first-time fathers. They can go in and really understand like the dynamic, mother, son, father, daughter, even their past wounds and stuff like that, being able to heal from that and be better fathers. We do Secret Santa events at the end of the year for Christmas, where we get families from Arizona, California, DC, Vegas, and we pool a good amount of money to provide them gifts for Christmas. We honestly help back that our mission statement is made for that specific purpose. We do a lot for epilepsy, so we have a lot of events and stuff with epilepsy, but we're also able to target specific places that we feel like need help and give support there.
And so how do people find your foundation?
Yeah, if you're looking for the foundation, it's thehundleyfoundation.org. And then you'll see, and we're actually updating our website now, so there'll be a new website here coming in about a week or two. But that'll be a nice rollout. But yeah, go to thehundleyfoundation.org or the Hundley Foundation on Instagram. And then for the companies, It's streams. So, typically you say STREAMS. But since I was number 7, it's the number 7 REAMS. So we still pronounce it as streams. But people always say, is it 7 reams or whatever, but it's streams. It just has the number 7 for myself. But yeah, on that, you can find us at streams.com, and that's sort of our management and our development side of things.
No, that's great. People definitely have to check it out. And then one last one, just the fun one. Just tell us a little bit about Monday Night Quarterbacks.
Oh man, yeah, that's something else I didn't even think about, and that's something that sparked. I didn't even think of ever broadcasting, but just last month or 2 months ago, CBS had reached out asking if I would do some broadcasting. Again, I've never thought of it in my life, but I was like, sure, I'll talk some football, have some fun. And then that sort of kept it going, and I found another passion for something I also like, and I would have never known if the opportunity never presented itself. So started doing that with them, and then have been doing that for the past month or two. And then I'll actually be doing the Monday Night Quarterbacks day after Christmas on the 26th and day after New Year's on the in January. So if you guys are looking at CBS, stay tuned, and I'll be on Monday Night Quarterback there.
That's really cool. I used to tell my son, I wish that back in the day I wanted to be a broadcaster. I said I would have been about the time of like Joe Buck. I said I could have been in the booth with Joe Buck. Maybe it could be me, Joe, and Troy. I don't know.
Oh man, I'm telling you.
Yeah, it would have been a great time. But this has been great, and you can find us at alumnidirect.com. You can also find us on Instagram and X and TikTok. But more importantly, the podcast is on our Alumni Direct YouTube channel, as well as across all the different podcast networks. Again, Athletes, Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. And we just encourage people, please, follow. There's just some great content. People like Brett and some of the other guests can, if we can just help impact some of these athletes that are really struggling, we want to do that.
Absolutely, man. Well, thank you for having me on, man, too. This is awesome. Awesome.
Good deal. Well, thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
See you guys.